Do you want to know how you can shoot nebulas from your own backyard? Stick with us, and I'm going to show you everything you need to know and how to go about doing it yourself. I am, of course, Mark Carter with Midwest Astro, and thanks so much for joining us tonight as I just untarped the telescope, and we're going to talk about some amazing target that we're actually going to go for tonight, and that you yourself can actually image from your own backyard. A lot of people don't believe, but all of these targets you can image from your backyard. Now, the resolution might be lacking, the definition could be different, right? Because anytime you look at an image from Hubble Space Telescope, or recently the James Webb Space Telescope, you're just not going to get those results. But you also don't have $15 billion to throw one of these into space. So the nebula we're going after tonight, it spans about the size of 5 full moons. It's located in the constellation of Cepheus, which is around 7,000 light years away from this particular nebula. Now you may be thinking, wow, 7,000 light years, that's a long distance, but it really isn't. It's right next door when we talk about light years, because some galaxies are even in the hundreds of millions of light years that I can image from my backyard. Now, I'm sure we can image some that are close to the billions, but you're not going to actually see them and know they're there in most cases, especially with just a 5-inch telescope. Maybe with like a 10 or up to a 16-inch telescope, you might be able to get those little blobs, essentially, just because most people's skies don't support a focal length of over 4,000 millimeters to really look deep. So inside of this nebula is a star cluster that spans nearly 110 light years, and it contains stars as old as 5 million years, which makes them relatively young. 5 million years to us is an eternity. We will obviously not be here in 5 million years, and just at this rate, the human race, who knows if it will be here in 5 million years. So 5 million years sounds like a long time, and yes, it is an eternity, right? We won't be here in 5 million years, and at this rate, I'm not sure if the human race will either. This world is crazy that we live in by all means and stretch of the imagination. So 5 million years, again, sounds like a long time, but when we talk about astronomical ages and distances, 5 million years is nothing, especially when you consider our sun is 4 billion years old and should live about another 4 billion, so it's middle-aged, so to speak. 5 million years is like a 1-week-old baby, if we think about it, from someone who's like 50 years old here on Earth. So they're young, they're bright, and they're very hot. So what nebula are we actually talking about tonight? Well, let's just get to it and reveal what's going on. We're going after the Wizard Nebula. Now, wizard in space, there's all sorts of animals, and now we have a wizard? Okay, so what's special about this wizard? Well, I've actually never integrated enough reasonable time into this target to make what I would consider a beautiful image, or one that I'd even share with you guys here watching tonight. So I want to do that. I want to put some time into it. I'm not going to spend a ton of nights on it by any means, but I definitely want to get some good detail, and that way we can share it with you guys and see what we come up with. All right, so this nebula, if you can believe it or not, was originally discovered by Caroline Herschel, the sister of William Herschel. It was discovered in 1787. Now, with this, think about it, 1787, it's not like they have a go-to mount or a computer that tells them where this is at. They set up a telescope and they went looking and they found something that stood out. I'm not sure if you gave me $5, I could point this telescope exactly at it on my first try. I rely on technology a lot. So just to think that in 1787, this person put a telescope up and they looked through it with their eye and they found this object. Again, I don't think I could find it. Now, you also have to consider a lot of these objects were founded in the 17 and 1800s. That's a long time ago. So it wasn't just them, but William Herschel did discover a lot of objects. But you also have to consider, we're still finding objects to this day. We see some people finding planetary nebulae, as well as other objects in the night sky. A lot of them tend to be way more faint, such as planetary nebulae, just because you need a lot of exposure time at fast focal ratios to really capture enough detail to make these beautiful images that we see from some of these people. So in this case, the star cluster that I had mentioned is cataloged as NGC 7380. So now I'm often asked what exactly causes a nebula to appear the way it does, and how does it get its shape, and how does it get its glow? And simply put, radiation and stellar winds of nearby stars, or in this case a cluster of stars, cave out cavities and pillars of gas, and that's what we're actually seeing. The gases are also ionized by the ultraviolet light from these stars, which is what gives it its glow. And the colors we're able to see are directly correlated to the wavelength of light that is generated from these gases becoming ionized. And then also I'm asked, well, how come I can't see a lot of these objects with just my naked eye, right? I've got an eye, I can see just fine. Why can't I see these targets? How do I know they actually exist? Well, number one, that's a great question. And when you've done this as long as I have, it really makes sense as to why you can't see them with your eyes. But when I talk to some friends or family, they're like, I should be able to see this. How come I can't? So let's think about this, right? These objects are so incredibly faint that even a 10-minute long exposure with a monochrome camera, I only get a little bit of detail. This camera is way more sensitive than your eye is. These objects emit photons. Photons are light, basically, right? And your retina requires so many photons to actually hit it before it says, oh, there's an object there. Well, these interstellar objects are so faint that not enough photons are actually hitting your retina for your brain to recognize something exists there. And that's why many professionals and amateurs will tell you the weakest instrument in astronomy is your eye. So then in addition to that, the gas in the surrounding areas will typically dissipate or be used up within a few million years. Now again, million sounds like a long time, but it's not long at all. However, these gases and dust are collectively bound to create and form new stars and potentially a new solar system. We could be looking at solar systems in the making, much like our own. Now you of course have to put this in perspective. It took billions of years for our Earth to form and be habitable. It took all of this time for our sun to mature and for this habitable zone to work for species and life on Earth as we know it. So when we look at these stars that are forming now, we could be looking at solar systems that won't truly be mature for another couple billion years. Now some people are talking about, could there be life out there? And you know what, for me, there has to be. We can't be the only thing that exists. There's too many stars, there's too many solar systems, there's too many galaxies, and there's too much space for us to be the only ones that happen to make it by sheer chance. But make no mistake, humans are made not to live in space and travel vast distances in space, nor provided the resources to do so. We are effectively stuck within our own solar system and likely on our own planet. There are some things that we can do to try to inhabit Mars, but at the end of the day, it's not made for us. Our blue jewel is for sure our home, and the human species, even if we do make it to Mars and inhabit Mars, will be gone when our sun decides its time is up, because it will engulf all of Earth and it will no longer create a habitable zone for life on Mars. So we really need to take care of Earth just a little bit more than what we do today. So now you can see the Wizard Nebula with just a really small telescope. You don't need anything super fancy. You don't need some giant 16-inch telescope. You could go to a local store, pick up any telescope, and you'll be able to see it. You could see it with binoculars. Now, you're not going to see it with the same detail that I get, of course, because again, your eye is too weak. It is best observed with a camera capable of using narrowband filters. You can use a DSLR and capture images here. It is recommended to have a modified DSLR, that way you can truly pick up all of the hydrogen that makes up this particular nebula. Dark skies will always help, but the nice thing with narrowband imaging is light pollution is less impactful as when you do broadband imaging. I also get asked sometimes, where can I buy some of this stuff? I highly recommend our friends at High Point Scientific and Agena Astro for that. I'll put links down below. That way you guys can definitely go shop around and look and see what might be befitting for you. Now, if you do have questions about what gear can I use to see this and want some input, be sure to leave those in the comments below. Also, if you're a new subscriber, let me know down below as well. I'll be sure to give you a personal shout out for subscribing. Thank you so much for joining tonight. Take care of each other, clear skies, and we'll see you next time. When you compare the age of my child and me to these infant star clusters and our sun, right? Like our sun it's old, it's middle-aged. Oh God, that sounds terrible. Let's go back.